Hey guys, tonight we drift into the soft, grey morning of Song-Dynasty Kaifeng, where the streets wake up with the clatter of shop shutters and the gentle hiss of steam rising from noodle pots. You stand at the threshold of the Imperial Accounting Office, an ocean of tired clerks hunched over scrolls the length of dragons, lungs full of ink dust and dreams of early retirement. The air is thick with the scent of bamboo paper and bitter tea, and somewhere in the background, a supervisor coughs in that universal tone that means get back to work. You probably won't survive this drowning not in battle but in paperwork, truly the most bureaucratic and imaginable. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always wild seeing this sleepy corner of the internet stretch across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, your sandals whispering against the polished brick floor, already questioning your life choices as an imperial calculator of everything. Your desk greets you like an old frenemy stacked with today's assignments, grain shipments from Sichuan, tea taxes from Fujian, and one smudged note that seems to say cloud levies pending Ministry of Weather. Yes, weather. Because in the Song Dynasty, taxation wasn't just about things humans could touch. If clouds blocked too much sunshine or rain overstayed its welcome, someone had to take notes and send a strongly worded report to the emperor. And today that lucky someone is you. Historians still argue whether this was genius environmental awareness or just the world's earliest complaint form about the sky. You unroll a fresh ledger and dip your brush in ink that gleams like a moonlit pond. Each stroke begins thick and bold before curling thin at the finish, accounting as calligraphy, bureaucracy posing as art. A colleague slumps beside you, muttering that accountants should be listed as an endangered species. You offer him half your stale rice cake and he accepts like you've saved his soul. Outside the office, Kaifeng hums with life, almost a million residents bustling through markets stacked with silk, porcelain, and questionable herbal tonics. The Song Dynasty is rich, innovative, and extremely determined to write down absolutely everything. They've invented paper money, improved printing, and unfortunately for you, turned data collection into a national sport. A clerk from the Salt Bureau rushes past carrying a scroll longer than his future. Salt taxes keep the empire's finances buoyant, so his panic level hovers just below spontaneous combustion. At least we don't handle alcohol tax, your desk neighbor whispers. Those guys count kegs all day and still have to do the math sober. 3 jokes in and the day has barely started. You take a sip of tea so strong it could wake a hibernating yak. Paper rustles, brushes scratch, and somewhere a pigeon drops exactly on the governor's official hat. A few clerks laugh until they realize that cleaning bird droppings might also be taxable. Beneath all this paperwork, though, there's a quiet miracle: standardized forms, careful audits, and local reports traveling through a network of couriers faster than most people expect for the 11th century. It's one of the world's first large-scale bureaucratic systems that actually, kind of works. Cloud taxes aside. As you log the number of granaries filled after another harvest, a thought creeps in: numbers don't lie. These ledgers track the beating heart of an empire: how much the people grow, what disasters threaten, where help must flow. It's a lot of pressure for a brush and some ink to carry. But when the supervisor strolls by, all he sees is that one figure in the corner you forgot to round properly. Paperwork zen instantly shattered. You glance out the window where sunlight glints off the yellow river's slow curve. Boats drift by carrying enough rice to feed entire districts, and all that food becomes lines on your page, evidence that the dynasty thrives another day. If life is just columns of input and output, maybe being a small number in the ledger of history isn't so bad. At least until someone decides clouds should pay tax again. The office bell chimes break time. You stretch arms numb from scribbling, thinking how absurd it is that the fate of millions depends on how neatly you form the character for grain. Outside, the city continues to breathe, unaware of the clerks who silently guard the empire by counting everything that matters, and a few things that probably don't. You step into the courtyard, savoring the rare moment of sunshine not yet entered into the official record. The afternoon heat of Kaifeng sticks to your robes like spilled ink. You shuffle back into the accounting hall, clutching a stack of reports heavy enough to flatten a poet. Around you, the empire hums in paper form: grain tallies, tea exports, tax exemptions, rainfall records, and something suspiciously labeled heavenly moisture compensation, which you pray isn't your problem. Your supervisor leans over your shoulder and murmurs, "Count carefully. The emperor prefers round numbers." You're tempted to reply, "So does everyone else who's ever balanced a checkbook," but your survival instincts override your sarcasm. In the Song-Dynasty, humor is taxable in patience. The ledger before you is a labyrinth of rice and clouds. The rice part you understand, precise records from every province, listing how many bushels were harvested, transported, or mysteriously lost to rats. The rats, by the way, have unionized. But the clouds, those are trickier. A recent edict demands that local officials report unusual weather patterns to ensure balanced cosmic harmony. Translation: if the crops fail, someone must prove it's not because the gods are angry at the accountants. You take a deep breath and flip open the weather and rice correlations volume, which weighs roughly as much as a horse. Inside, meticulous diagrams compare grain yields to recorded cloud coverage over 2 decades. Historians still argue whether this was early meteorology or just a bureaucrat's desperate attempt to make drizzle sound meaningful. A junior clerk beside you whispers, "Did you hear the Ministry of Clouds just hired astrologers?" You glance up. For what? He shrugs. To see if the stars can explain the tax shortfall. You sigh. Even in the 11th century, people are still blaming Mercury in retrograde. You copy rainfall data from a district near Hangzhou, noting how each season's yield has its own poetic flair: spring gentle, autumn sour, winter sulking. It's oddly beautiful, this obsessive record-keeping. Somewhere between madness and devotion, these clerks have turned statistics into scripture. And yet, the Song bureaucrats are not fools. They understand that behind every number is a real family: farmers ankle-deep in paddies, merchants haggling in markets, and couriers galloping through rain to deliver these very reports. Every decimal point carries someone's sweat. Every deficit might mean empty bowls in winter. You look up at the rafters where paper charms flutter, hung by clerks hoping for divine accuracy. If the gods want perfect ledgers, one mutters, they should do the math themselves. The others nod solemnly. A small rebellion of ink-stained philosophers. Outside, thunder rumbles across the city. Perfect timing: the Ministry of Clouds will be thrilled. You take note in the margin: unscheduled storm during rice audit, possible omen, or just weather. Later historians will read that note and debate for centuries whether it marked the beginning of bureaucratic astrology or simply a tired accountant's sarcasm. By late evening, the office candles sputter low, and the smell of melted wax mixes with old parchment. Your hand cramps from writing the same character for grain hundreds of times until the symbol starts to look alien. You pause, flex your fingers, and realize you've spent the whole day counting food you'll never eat and weather you can't control. There's a strange peace in that realization. Perhaps this is what the old scholars meant by measuring the universe one brush stroke at a time. In some twisted way, the Song-Dynasty's obsession with data feels almost modern, like an ancient version of cloud computing, only the cloud was literal, and the storage medium was a bamboo scroll. At the far end of the hall, a clerk recites harvest figures aloud like a monk chanting sutras. The cadence is hypnotic: 42 pickles from Jiangxi, 47 from Hebei, 3 missing from Guangxi. His voice fades into the rhythmic scratch of 100 brushes. Together they sound like rain, soft, constant, and inevitable. As night settles, you make one final note: cloud density thick but fading. A perfect metaphor for your mental state. You blow out your candle and glance toward the open window. The sky outside is streaked with silver clouds drifting lazily over Kaifeng, indifferent to being counted. Somewhere below, a farmer dreams of clear skies and a good harvest. Somewhere above, a bureaucrat will turn that dream into statistics. You smile faintly. Maybe counting clouds isn't such a foolish thing after all. It's a way of pretending that even the heavens can be organized, filed, and understood, if only for a moment, before they drift away again. By morning, your dreams have turned to spreadsheets only in your time, their scrolls stretching from one end of the room to the other. You wake with ink stains on your sleeve and a headache shaped exactly like the character for tax. Someone's rooster has been crowing outside for what feels like a century, and the first thing you see when you step into the office courtyard is a mountain of bamboo slips stacked like a miniature fortress. Welcome to the Song-Dynasty's paper empire. A delivery clerk bows as he passes, arms loaded with fresh reports from the provinces. Each bundle carries news from the farthest edges of the empire: the tea plantations of Fujian, the salt pans of Hebei, the copper mines near Yunnan. You can practically feel the weight of the nation pressing down in those scrolls, the breath of millions of people distilled into numbers, written on something that splinters under your fingers. And it's not just paper anymore. The empire's hunger for data has outgrown the forest's bamboo slips, silk scrolls, even thinly sliced wood panels have become fair game. It's the world's first information overload, centuries before anyone invented the word bureaucracy-induced burnout. The clerks joke that if the empire ever burns, it won't be war that does it, it'll be one spark landing in the filing room. You sit at your desk, staring at the latest imperial directive. It's phrased politely, as imperial orders go, but the meaning is clear: reduce record loss, increase accuracy. In other words, count faster, file cleaner, sleep never. So the office tries something new. Instead of relying purely on handwritten ledgers, a few innovative officials experiment with using wooden abacuses to speed up calculations. Rows of beads clicking back and forth create a music of mathematics: soft, repetitive, hypnotic. You join the rhythm, watching as trade figures and grain reports resolve into neat columns. Historians still argue whether this was the world's first bureaucratic attempt at mechanized data processing or just a desperate coping mechanism for insomnia. Your supervisor drops by, muttering something about information consolidation. You recognize the tone: it's the same one modern managers use when they say synergy before demanding unpaid overtime. He gestures at your piles of paper and says, "Imagine, one day we might store all these on something smaller." You stare at him. Like what clouds? You both laugh, not realizing how accidentally prophetic that is. A courier arrives breathless, announcing an urgent dispatch from Hangzhou. The city's canals have overflowed, flooding half the warehouses. You unfold the damp scroll. Half the characters are smudged beyond recognition. The empire has lost thousands of bushels of rice. You record the losses, hands trembling slightly. A joke no longer seems appropriate. Still, in the strangest way, there's comfort in the ritual. You measure damage, assign numbers, estimate compensation. It's as if order itself can be restored through arithmetic. The clerks of the Song dynasty truly believed in the moral power of accounting, that the balance sheet was a reflection of cosmic harmony. When the numbers aligned, so did heaven and earth. But not everyone agrees. Some scholars argue that the empire's obsession with ledgers led to its fragility, that when the Mongols came, they found a civilization buried under its own paperwork. Others say it was precisely that devotion to detail that allowed the Song to thrive as long as it did. Historians still debate it, like accountants arguing over whether the numbers really balance or just politely pretend to. By evening, the office glows with lamplight. A breeze sneaks in through the lattice windows, stirring a few loose pages. One slips off your desk, landing at your feet. It's a tax exemption form for a tea merchant named Lu from Fujian, approved, stamped, and forgotten. You wonder if Lu ever knew that his small business success was sealed with your tired brush stroke. You glance around the hall, rows of clerks hunched in silence, their faces painted gold by candlelight. The air hums with quiet diligence. There's something almost monastic about it. In this temple of ink and paper, every calculation feels like prayer. You roll up the final scroll and tie it with a red silk ribbon. The pile beside you has grown into a small hill, bamboo nightmares masquerading as progress. As you blow out your lamp, you can't help thinking that maybe, just maybe, one day all these ledgers will tell a story greater than taxes. A story of a civilization that tried to measure the world, its harvests, its storms, its very breath, and in doing so, almost managed to count itself into immortality. Morning in Kaifeng begins like a ceremony, the sound of bamboo blinds rolling up, the scent of incense curling through the corridors, and the echo of sandals on polished tile as officials shuffle toward their desks with quiet resignation. You follow the current of tired bureaucrats until you reach the main hall, where a large bronze gong gleams beneath a painted ceiling of dragons and clouds. It's the day of the imperial audit, when numbers meet heaven's mandate, and even the stars are expected to balance their accounts. You stand behind your desk, sweating slightly, as inspectors from the Ministry of Revenue take their seats. The emperor himself will not attend, he's far too elevated for spreadsheets, but his spirit hovers in every polished seal, every signature done in vermilion. Before the audit begins, the chief examiner recites a passage from the classic of documents: when the numbers are just, the realm is at peace. Which sounds noble, but in practice means you'll spend the next 8 hours defending the math on last quarter's salt tax. You take your place among a dozen clerks, scrolls stacked in front of you like defensive walls. To your left, the court astrologer sits cross-legged, examining charts of lunar movement as if they're profit statements. You suppress a sigh because, somehow, the stars are part of this audit. The Song-Dynasty's fiscal philosophy blends Confucian morality, Taoist balance, and a sprinkle of cosmic paranoia. If a flood ruins a harvest, that's not just bad luck, it's a reflection of imbalance between heaven and the throne. Therefore, every fluctuation in grain or silver must be matched by celestial data. Rainfall decreases, check if Venus has dimmed. Rice exports down, consult the Crab Nebula. Historians still argue whether this fusion of astrology and accounting was spiritual sophistication or just cosmic micromanagement. The examiner calls your name. You step forward with trembling hands, offering your scrolls. He unrolls one with the solemnity of a priest opening scripture. The numbers gleam in black ink. He nods slowly. Grain intake from Jiangnan balanced. You exhale. Then his brow furrows. But the cloud counts. Ah, the clouds again. The eternal nemesis. You explain that this season's anomalies were due to the monsoon arriving early. The astrologer interrupts, claiming Mercury's alignment with the fire star was responsible. You both exchange polite smiles that hide mutual disbelief. The chief examiner clears his throat and declares, then record both explanations. Of course. Heaven forbid the Emperor's ledgers lack metaphysical nuance. By midday, you've defended rainfall data, explained grain surpluses, and nearly fainted when a clerk spills ink on a treasury report. The room buzzes like a hive of nervous bees. Each scroll that passes the table becomes a piece of temporary immortality, proof that the universe, for now, is in balance. Outside, Kaifeng's streets are a mirror to the empire's complexity. Scholars debate ethics in tea shops while traders haggle over bolts of silk. Monks chant beside merchants. Everything is ordered, categorized, measured. The empire's stability depends on this quiet arithmetic, each figure whispering reassurance that heaven smiles upon bureaucracy. Yet beneath the surface, doubts ripple. You've heard whispers of officials embezzling silver, peasants overtaxed to exhaustion, records quietly adjusted to maintain harmony. Numbers can lie, after all they just do it politely. You stare down at your own ledgers, wondering which of these elegant columns conceal small tragedies. When the audit finally adjourns, the chief examiner rises, bows toward the north where the Emperor's palace looms unseen, and declares, Heaven's order remains. Everyone exhales as if the stars themselves have signed off on the fiscal year. You join the quiet applause, though a corner of your mind wonders whether Heaven's accountant is laughing right now. As dusk falls, the astrologer approaches you in the courtyard, robes whispering like paper. He offers a half smile. You keep fine numbers, he says, but you must remember they are shadows, not truths. You ask what he means. Even clouds, he replies, have weight, though we cannot touch it. The same with numbers. Then he walks away, leaving you to ponder whether cosmic accountants also suffer from existential burnout. Later, back at your desk, you light a single candle and open your ledger again. The glow paints the ink strokes in gold. Each figure is neat, exact, obedient. Yet something in you resists. You dip your brush and, in the margin, write a note to no one in particular. Heaven may count stars, but we count lives. Outside, the temple bells of Kaifeng ring through the cooling air, marking another day reconciled, another balance achieved between the earth and the sky. And still, the clouds drift on unbothered by audits, unbalanced by taxes, just doing what clouds do. The next morning begins not with the rustle of paper but with silence. The office is unusually still, no shouting messengers, no scurrying clerks, no frantic abacus clatter. It's the first day after the imperial audit, and the empire is briefly, mercifully, at rest. You wander through the empty hall, fingers brushing the edge of desks scarred by years of ink and elbow grease. Your own workspace looks strangely smaller without the mountain of ledgers. Only one scroll remains, your final report of the season. You unroll it slowly, watching the brush strokes curve like ancient veins across the page. Each number tells a story you already know: the flood in Hangzhou, the surplus in Jiangnan, the taxes deferred for war veterans who will never return to collect them. The ink has barely dried, but already it feels like history. Outside, the early light breaks through a veil of fog. turning the courtyard stones silver. You step out, stretching stiff limbs. The sky above Kaifeng is filled with thin, wandering clouds soft as silk, pale as old parchment. They drift in lazy formations, like ledgers unwinding across the heavens. Somewhere, you imagine, the Ministry of Clouds is already preparing to count them again. Did you hear your colleague murmurs beside you, balancing a steaming cup of tea? They're planning to replace the cloud records with something called heaven charts. Astrologers say it'll make divine taxation more accurate. You chuckle, taking a sip. So now the gods get audited too. He shrugs. Maybe heaven just likes order. There's something poetic in that idea that the universe itself longs to be organized, even if the humans doing it barely manage to stay awake. You think of the astrologer's words, numbers are shadows, not truths. Maybe that's the secret the empire keeps missing. You can count clouds, measure rainfall, chart the stars, but you can never quite measure the heart of what's living beneath them. By midday, the clerks trickle back in, gossiping softly about their next assignments. One swears he's transferring to the silk bureau, at least silk doesn't fall from the sky. Another insists he'll quit entirely and become a monk, the only profession with fewer forms. You smile. These people, ink-stained, weary, half-mad with precision, are the quiet machinery that keeps the Song-Dynasty spinning. You take up your brush again. One last entry before the season ends. Date, 7th month, 23rd day. Weather, cloudy, but kind. Remark, the empire continues. Historians will one day argue whether the Song dynasty fell because its armies were weak or because its clerks were too busy calculating rainfall to notice the Mongols. But that debate misses something gentler. The empire's true power was never in its armies or walls, it was in its paper. The ability to imagine that everything, even the sky, could be written, ordered, and understood. Even now, the scent of ink feels sacred. Each ledger a small defiance against oblivion. You dip your brush again, tracing one final phrase in the margin, a note that no emperor will ever read. All things counted fade, yet counting is our way of staying alive. You pause, letting the ink dry. A warm breeze drifts through the window, ruffling the edge of the scroll. The clouds outside have changed shape entirely, as if rewriting themselves. You imagine the next generation of accountants, hundreds of years from now, staring at their own version of a ledger, screens glowing in dark rooms, still trying to make sense of the same human mess: hunger, ambition, balance, loss. The technology changes. The instinct doesn't. The day slips into evening. Candles flicker. The last of your tea cools, forgotten. You close the ledger gently and place it on the growing pile. Somewhere a bell rings, soft and low. Another record completed. Another breath captured. And for a long moment, Kaifeng seems to hold still, the whole empire perfectly suspended, as if heaven itself has paused to review its own accounts. Now the story softens. The ink dries. You lean back in your chair and let the quiet take over. The lamplight turns golden, painting the air with slow-moving dust, each mote a drifting cloud in miniature. Somewhere beyond the city walls, the river murmurs, carrying silt and secrets toward the sea. The world of ledgers and scrolls begins to dissolve, leaving only rhythm, the steady hum of breath, the faint scratch of a brush long finished. Numbers fade into memory. You can almost see the clerks folding their robes, extinguishing their candles, stepping out into the cool night where the moon hangs low and white as rice paper. Up above, the sky stretches wide and endless. The same clouds that once filled your reports now float free, uncounted, and unbothered. They move like soft handwriting across the stars, carrying whispers of everything you measured and everything you never could. You breathe deeply, feeling the weight of centuries ease away. The empire, the taxes, the endless audits all just echoes now, softened by time. What remains is the quiet pulse beneath it all, people trying to bring order to chaos, one careful stroke at a time. So rest easy, accountant of clouds. The scrolls are closed, the ink has settled. The sky is finally balanced. Good night.